everybody. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
And I'm Mike DeLisio.
Today we're taking a look at Xylotar, which was a instrument. I guess it doesn't even exist, does it?
Well, Tom, you clearly did not read the lore included in the rulebook.
I 100% did
The inspiration. On July 6, 1985, young Bobby McColdsnap attended a concert in Calgary, Alberta, where he rocked out to Howard Jones's Things Can Only Get Better with 5,000 other fans. That night changed his life, and Bobby went back to his home in Churchill, Manitoba, with a new mission. He wanted to be a guitarist. The story continues.
Yeah, but doesn't it then talk about a polar bear? Because I feel like this is a made-up story.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to play the guitar, but he couldn't. That's the section called The Problem. His polar bear paws could not play the guitar.
I was asking if this was a real instrument. I know there's a guitar. I don't think there's a xylotar.
There's not.
Yes, I did read that now that you mention it, because I remember the part about his paws not being able to do the thing.
And because the inventor of the Xylotar had disappeared and Bobby was a polar bear, concerned that the Canadian justice system wouldn't treat him fairly, Bobby took his Xylotar and ran off into the wilderness.
All right. Xylotar is a trick-taking game. Now, it was not originally called Xylotar. Mike, what was it called?
Magic Trick.
Got it. Okay, Magic Trick. I played both of them. It's a trick-taking game with some differences, as all trick-taking games have some differences. Chris is about to show them to you.
Here's a 4-player game of Xylotar set up on the table. This array is a player's hand of cards. You can see that I'm set up for 4 players, 4 arrays of cards. The highest number is on the left side, which is why this high note card is here for reference. And then this is the smallest number. The numbers range from 1 to 10. And within each color or each suit of card, you can see that there's a range of possibilities of what they might be. So this pink one here could at the highest be a 3. It could be a 0, 1, 2, or 3. And this is referenced on this card over here that you'll keep next to your high card, the highest value. This is sorted before play. Everyone is dealt a hand of cards. They arrange it from smallest to largest number. They put this high note card right by the highest number. They pass it to the player on their left, and then that player organizes them as such. Xylotar is a trick-taking game, and what that means is a player, the start player, will play a card of any color, any suit that they wish, and then everyone else has to play a card of the matching color, if they have one, if possible, and the highest number amongst that will win. So let's show what that would actually look like. Right now, players do not know what the values are in their hands, so this player plays out this blue one, or this teal-colored card, and they see that it is a 2. This player over here has to follow suit or follow the color if possible, so they will play out this one here, which is a 4, closer to the higher note. This player over here decides to play out this one, and it's the 0 of the suit, and this player is going to put out this one, which is the 5. That is the highest number, and so therefore that will win the trick. This player will collect these cards. As the cards are played out, players are going to look at the numbers that just came out from their area to try to use deduction to figure out what the other numbers are to the left and to the right of their played card. So since this player won the trick with the 5 of that color, they will keep this over here in their score pile, and then they will become the lead player. They get to choose any one of these cards that they want to play out. An important rule is you can never play your highest card, so the highest card right by your high card symbol, unless you're forced to. You can never lead off with it unless it's your last one. So in this case, maybe this player plays out this yellow one here, and it's the 8. This player says, well, I probably can't beat that, so I'll play this lower one, throw this one into the mix. This player over here on the right side, it's a little hard to see, but it has no yellow cards, and therefore they can play the red card, which is special. This is called the trump suit. In a trick-taking game, the trump suit will win. The highest value trump suit that has been played will beat the starting color. And this player over here up top, because they have yellow, still has to follow yellow, so they'll throw one in. They'll probably throw in the lowest one here. And so knowing that they're going to lose the trick to this player because they played the red trump suit, this player would collect all of the cards. So as more cards are being played, players are learning more and more about what values they have. This is important because at some point, a player is going to play out a card, and after they play their card, they are eligible to make a bid. A bid on how many tricks they think they'll win. A trick is the whole collective set of cards. So right now this player has won one trick. If they continue to win more bundles, they will offset them. And so you would show, I have won 2 tricks this way. If you win more, you would lay them out like this to show you've won 3, maybe even higher. After a player plays a card, they can signify that they would like to bid. And what that means is they will look at 2 cards that are adjacent to each other, right next to each other, or where there's now a gap. They will peek at those privately and choose one of those cards to be their bid value, and the other one will go back. So this player might say, I think at the end of the whole hand of cards, I will have won 4 tricks exactly. So the player will keep this out in front of them as a reminder to everybody, I'm trying to win 4 tricks. And this player might just do so as everybody keeps playing out perhaps smaller and smaller cards. Look at this player wins this one again. And so they're at 2 out of their 4 tricks. Players just continue playing until all of the cards have been used. They will win a point for each trick that they have won, plus they will earn a bonus 5 points if they match their bid exactly. So if this player wins 2 more, they will get 1 point per trick, plus 5 points for hitting their bid exactly. So this player could get 9 points in the round, and everyone else will score up. You play a handful of rounds, and whoever has the highest score after all of that is the winner.
All right, so funny theme, right? The funny polar bear with the Xylotar. It's almost a waste of a theme in the sense that it's not in the game at all. I mean, these are like supposed to be,
the keys, the music notes.
Whatever they call keys on a xylophone are. The different bells, I think, or whatever. But that's it? No polar bear involved. I mean...
Okay, I'm glad that the funniness of the rule book is kind of contained to the front. It doesn't spill into the rules explanation. The rules are explained very clearly, which I do appreciate. But I'm okay that it's a kooky theme.
What do you all think of this size of card for trick taking?
Well, it's certainly unique. But if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember, I don't think Magic Trick, I think those were standard cards. I'm pretty sure those were standard cards. Yeah, and speaking of theme, basically that game was almost standard cards. The suits were more than the standard hearts, clubs, spades, for whatever. But theme doesn't bother me in this just because trick-taking games most often are just basically what does the art look like? What does the aesthetic look like? What do the cards look like? There are very few what I would consider to be thematic trick-taking games, so it doesn't really bother me.
I'm not complaining about bothering. I don't want to belabor this point. I'm just saying that I was like, what a hilarious theme. Oh, I almost feel like it was wasted on this game. A trick-taking game isn't a theming game. But
and not to harp too much on the original being called Magic Trick works really well for the sense that there's a sense of wonder in this game. As you're playing cards from their face-down position, you don't know what they are. And so I kind of like that little magic touch more. This one is fine. It doesn't really feel like music notation or notes or anything because it just is a card game. But with this funny theme, you asked about the card size. At first I was bothered that there were these very narrow cards until I realized, you set them across, and if they were any wider, people saw the overview. There's a huge, massive empty area in the middle of the 4 Keytars, or the Xylotars, I'm sorry, around. So I think originally you had to make 2 rows across, and I could see why there'd be more confusion as to at what point is the break, at what point is the higher number than the lower. So I'm glad they went with the smaller cards so that they reasonably fit spread straight across.
So I was excited when I heard the initial pitch of this because the cards are face down and you see the colors and a number spread. And so you're using sometimes deduction to figure out, you'd be like, I know exactly what this card is. I know what it is because I have this one, I have whatever else it might be. I know these things. So you're trying to figure out what these cards are and everything like that. And what's interesting to me is for some reason it reminds me of Trio.
Oh, okay.
It has some of the same concepts of, you have this card. I'm trying to figure out what cards are in what people's hands, mixed with a trick-taking game. But I think, maybe you guys can disagree, but I think this is the main conceit of the game. This is the, hey, I don't know what I have. They're different colors. There's a different amount of each color, and trying to use deduction and stuff. And I want to know what you guys think of that mechanism.
Sure, I'll make Mike answer first. I'm curious what he has to say.
Yeah, you're referring specifically to the face-down deduction style elements? Yeah, that's my favorite part of the game, and that I agree with you, Tom. That is essentially the hook of the game. I'm going to try to not do this as often as I kind of want to, meaning comparing the two games. But in Magic Trick, it was the same way, but you didn't have the number distribution on the back of the cards. It was just like the suit of the card you knew. And I think that was to make it more kind of easier, quite honestly, and more approachable as a game. Same with the way they changed the bidding, which was much more challenging and strict in the first game of Magic Trick than it is here in Xylotar. But that is the main hook, and I think it's a good hook. I think it does set it apart from many other games, because you said there's a little bit of deduction. I would agree, but the times when you can deduce it and it's not 100% perfect information feels very satisfying.
I agree with Mike there. I think that knowing the different number distribution, which wasn't in the original, right, does make it a little bit easier. I have a card that says 0 through 3 in the middle of my stack. I know immediately nothing to the right of it can be higher than a 3. So it gives you some information right away, but I like that while, yes, half of the game is deducing your hand, the other half is trying to play a good trick-taking game around it. I think that the trick-taking system itself is good, very simple, follow suit, there's a trump suit red, but that bid in the middle of the game, in the middle of the hand, is kind of the second little conceit of the game. You know, not letting yourself play out so many cards that you get to the point where you're like, I want to bid 2, but I've been forced to play all my 2s because I took too long to do the bidding part of it. So I think those two things work in tandem really well, and I like both parts of it.
I don't like either part. Well, so here's the thing. One of the things I like about it in the trick-taking game is I'm like, oh, I have these cards. I'm like thinking what you have and everything. Here, you mentioned, you have that card there, you know all those cards next to it, what they are. Me too. Mm-hmm. I can also see those. Now, the argument could be made, well, at the beginning, when you sort the cards out and give them to the person, you do know one-handed cards. My memory is not good enough for that. It really isn't. I might remember a few things. Like, I've done some where I give you like 4 9s. Or maybe, I don't know if 4 9s is possible. Let's say 4 4s, whatever.
Yeah. But
and I'm like, okay, I can remember that because it was such a unique thing. And I suppose I could sit there and study them for a while, but I don't want memory in my trick-taking games, even though it's, there is a little bit of memory involved in card counting always. But I miss that. And as for the bid, I hate everything about that. And you know what? I'm just going to lose this debate. I don't have a rational reason. I want my bids to be what I bid, not possibly a random number. That bothers me. It has bothered me. And the fact that when you bid it and I'm not playing a card, I don't know why. I don't have a good reason. I just don't like it. I'm sorry.
It's perfectly fine you don't like it. I mean, I don't think you'll be the only one. I don't think you'll be the only one to not like it. But to me, well, I do like it. I actually preferred it in Magic Trick when it was more kind of strict. Because it makes the deduction more important. I think it raises the kind of the purpose of the deduction in the game, because what I tend to do, and I'm not saying I win this game all the time, but I do okay at it. What I tend to do is I like to leave myself at least one card in certain areas where I know. And I'm one of those players that will almost always make my bid towards the end. That's just what has worked for me most in the past. And that's where the deduction is really important, because I want to have a pretty good idea so that it's not just a random shot in the dark. Oftentimes I know exactly what my last 3 or 4 cards are going to be based off what else was played. And so I know what my bid is going to be. I just want to try to get myself close to that bid before I actually reveal it. So, I mean, I do like it. I know that a lot of people probably won't. There's people that don't like bidding in trick-taking games, period. So certainly one like this, where it kind of plays with the simplest form of bidding, yeah, I can see this being not popular with many players. I happen to love it.
I do like bidding in trick-taking games, actually. Well, I like bidding, like how many tricks you're about to take or whatever. I just feel like I have more control. I will say I like that the numbers are on the back here better, because I like deduction, and so I get that. At the end of the day, for me, it's an interesting game. It's interesting.
We'll all agree with that, yeah.
I don't dislike it based on mechanisms until I actually play them. But when you explain it, I'm like, ooh, this is cool. I like the deduction. But then the bidding just drives me batty. And the sometimes sheer randomness, it just feels more random. And there's randomness in every trick-taking game. Anytime you teach someone new a trick-taking game, they're like, I can't do anything with his hand. I'm like, well, I could. Because I know how to play trick-taking games. I would know something to do. And I'm sure you could do the same thing here. I just don't. The memory part puts me off a bit, and then it just feels more random. And I don't dislike random trick-taking games. There's another one we'll be reviewing in a couple weeks that I find hilariously insane, and I don't know why I enjoyed so much. But this one for me was one that you could talk me into playing. You know, I don't hate it, except for the bidding part. I really do hate that part. I don't know why. I like everything else. I mean, there's nothing else I dislike. I just hate that bid. For some reason, it just drives me nuts because I'll forget, oh, you haven't bid yet. And I thought that card was going to be played, and the whole thing throws off. So I'm giving this a 6, but it is like I want to be clear, it's a 6.00000. It might even be a 5.999. I don't want to say I dislike it.
You went there.
I don't want to say I dislike it, but I'm close to. But you could talk me into playing it, so I can't give it a 5 because I won't play a 5.
Sure.
So that's where I'm at.
That's interesting because I enjoy a lot of trick-taking games. One of my favorite classic deck of card games is Spades. And the hardest part, I think, of introducing Spades to people is, here's your hand of cards, make a bid at the beginning. I think that oddly, this system is almost easier for onboarding, even though the whole game around it is wackier and stranger. I think the idea of having a moving bid in the middle of the hand creates a nice, fun sense of flexibility for me. So and there's other trick-taking games that have kind of a fluid bid that can be interacted with during the course of the hand. I like this a lot, so I'm giving it an 8. I think that it's one of those games that's zanier, it's less directly thinky, even though, kind of like you mentioned, there's a lot of deduction, and you are not just looking at your hand, you're absolutely looking at the information from other players' hands at the table. It's one that's flexible because you can play it as, really focused as you want to, or you can kind of shoot from the hip, and both systems tend to work pretty well, I think, because of that mid-hand bidding system. So for me, it works fantastic. I like it a lot. It's an 8.
Yeah, you mentioned the fluid bidding. I think that's going to be really. I think most people the game's going to live and die on that. Obviously for Tom, that's just, he hates it, and so therefore, he's just not going to go out of his way to play the game. I love flexible bids. My favorite version of it is in a game. The newest version of it is called Twinkle Starship. It was called Segment Tricks. So I really like when you can have these, like Chris said, fluid bids. And I think it works very well in here. I'm also going to be giving the game an 8. Although being said, I really did prefer the original game. However, I think this is a game that more people will be able to enjoy than Magic Trick, because that one was really focused towards, hardcore trick-taking people. You're not going to introduce anybody to trick-taking with Magic Trick. I think you could do that with Xylotar. Maybe not the best choice for a first trick-taking game, but it's not overwhelming in what it has going on. The one kind of negative that I would say to this game, and it's not unique to this game, there are other games that do it, is that, as Tom mentioned earlier, you're having to set up the hand of cards to the player. I think it's on your left. And so you have to set it from, highest to lowest within each kind of suit. And if that gets messed up, the game just breaks, right? You'll have to redo that hand. So be aware of that. You want to make sure that you very clearly explain how the setup works, or else again, you'll find out in the middle or end of a hand that something was wrong there. So keep that in mind. But I do like that this game is now going to be available to more people in a slightly more approachable package. An 8.
Well, there you go, folks. That's Xylotar. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Mike Felicio.
I'm going to make this instrument. You're going to play it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vassell.